When you drive strangers for a living, you see the best and the darkest sides of the night. Some rides don't just stay in your memory, they haunt you. Most rides are routine. Pick someone up, drop them off, forget their face. But every so often, a ride stays with you. These are 4 nights when passengers weren't entirely human. Real stories told by real drivers. If you ever find yourself alone in the back seat of an Uber, you might want to keep listening. It was late, maybe around 1:45 in the morning. I had been driving Uber for about 6 months, mostly doing the late night shifts because they paid better. That night, the city felt different. The streets were unusually empty, even for that hour, and the air was heavy with fog, rolling in from the nearby river. I was parked in a dimly lit gas station lot, sipping a cold coffee, when I got a ride request. Pickup was just a couple of streets away, an older part of town where the street lights are few and far between, and the houses look like they've been standing there since the 1950s. I drove over and saw nothing. No one waiting by the curb, no movement behind the windows. Just a single streetlight flickering overhead, casting a pale yellow glow across the cracked sidewalk. I was about to cancel when I saw someone step forward from between 2 houses. He was tall, thin, wearing an oversized black hoodie. Hood up, hands in his pockets. He didn't wave, didn't even look at me, just opened the back door and slid inside without a word. The air in the car instantly felt colder. I glanced in the rearview mirror. His head was tilted slightly down, so I couldn't see much of his face, but his skin looked pale, unnaturally pale, almost gray under the dim interior light. Hey, how's it going?" I asked, trying to break the silence. Nothing, not even a nod. The GPS showed the drop-off was 14 minutes away, in the industrial district by the docks. I put the car in drive, and we pulled away. From the moment we started moving, I could hear this faint sound behind me, almost like someone breathing. But slower, deeper. I thought maybe he was asleep. But every time I glanced up in the mirror, his head was still turned slightly toward the window, motionless. The fog got thicker as we got closer to the water. My headlights barely cut through it. The streets became emptier and emptier. At one point, I hit a red light and turned to make small talk again. "Long night?" But there was no response. When I glanced into the rear view this time, the seat was empty. I froze. The back door had never opened. I would have heard it. I pulled the car over, heart pounding, and turned all the way around. No one. No sign of movement. The seatbelt was still buckled. I checked the app. The ride was still in progress. I ended it immediately, but when I looked at the trip history, there was nothing. No record of the ride request. I sat there for maybe a full minute, just listening to the ticking of the hazard lights and the faint hum of the engine. Then, from behind me, in the fog outside the rear window, I saw him, the same man, standing perfectly still, hood still over his head. Only now, he was smiling. Before I could react, he stepped backward into the fog and disappeared. I floored it out of there, didn't even care about my next ride request. To this day, when I check my trip logs for that night, there's a 14-minute gap where nothing exists. No record of me picking anyone up, no payment, no passenger. But I know he was there. This happened in the summer of 2019. I was driving for Uber on a Saturday night in a smaller city in the Midwest. It was around 11:30 p.m., prime time for bar pickups. That night had been busy. I'd already done 6 rides, all back to back. The last one dropped me near a strip mall that had one of those 24-hour diners. I decided to park there for a minute, stretch my legs, and check my phone. The parking lot was big and mostly empty, except for a few cars near the diner entrance. The overhead lights flickered here and there, but the rest of the lot was swallowed by shadows. That's when I saw her. She was standing alone in the far corner of the parking lot, well outside the reach of the lights. At first, I thought maybe she was waiting for someone, but the way she stood didn't look right. Her arms were hanging stiffly by her sides, and she was facing away from me, toward the empty field behind the lot. I tried not to stare, but something about her caught my attention. Her clothes looked outdated. A pale blue dress, like something from the 1970s, with lace along the collar. Her hair was long and dark, almost blending into the night. I got a ride request then. Pickup location, this very parking lot. The name just said Anna. I confirmed the request and slowly drove toward her. When my headlights swept across her, she didn't flinch, didn't move at all. I rolled down the passenger window and called out, "Hey, are you Anna?" Nothing. She just kept staring straight ahead. The GPS said the passenger was here, so I put the car in park and stepped out. The moment my feet hit the asphalt, she turned her head toward me. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and glassy. No expression. She didn't blink. "Are you Anna?" I asked again, my voice a little shakier now. She nodded just once, then walked toward the back door and got in. The way she moved was strange. Slow, deliberate, like every step was calculated. I got back in the driver's seat and started the trip. The drop-off point was in the middle of a residential neighborhood, about 15 minutes away. The first 5 minutes of the ride were completely silent. I could feel her eyes on the back of my head. I checked the rearview mirror. She was staring at me, not the road. "Long night?" I asked, trying to break the tension. She tilted her head slightly, as if considering the question, then whispered something so softly I couldn't catch it. "Sorry, what was that?" I asked. Her lips didn't move this time. She just kept staring. I glanced at the GPS. 7 minutes to go. I was starting to feel relieved that it would be over soon. That's when I noticed something in the mirror. Her reflection didn't match her position. In the seat, she was sitting upright. But in the mirror, her head was tilted all the way back, mouth hanging open, eyes rolled upward. My stomach dropped. I looked away from the mirror, my hands gripping the wheel tighter. When I finally pulled onto the street where the drop-off was supposed to be, I saw nothing. No houses, no streetlights. Just a dead-end road with an overgrown field. This doesn't look right," I said. When I looked back, the seat was empty. No door had opened, no sound. She was just gone. The air inside the car was freezing. My breath fogged the windshield. The GPS still showed her pin in the middle of the field. I ended the trip and drove straight home. When I checked my phone the next day, that ride wasn't listed in my history, just like it had never happened. But here's the part that still keeps me up. 2 weeks later, I drove past that same diner in the middle of the night. And she was there again. Same spot. Same pale blue dress, still facing the empty field. A few years ago, I was working the overnight shift during a heavy summer storm. The streets were slick, rain hammering on the roof, wipers going full speed. Around 3 a.m., I got a ping for a pickup near an industrial park. Not a place people usually call from that late, unless they work the night shift. I pulled up to the pin location, and the lot was completely empty except for one flickering street light. Under it stood a man in a long, dark coat, just staring at my car. When he got in, the first thing I noticed was his smell. Not bad exactly, but like damp earth and old wood. He didn't give me an address, just said, "Drive straight until I tell you to turn." I didn't love that, but I started driving. Every time the lightning flashed, I saw his silhouette in the rear view, tall, thin, hands resting neatly on his knees. But his shadow, it didn't quite match him. It seemed longer, wider, like there was something else sitting behind him, leaning forward. After about 10 minutes, he said, "Turn left here." It was a narrow gravel road, almost invisible in the dark. I slowed, glancing at the GPS. It didn't register the turn at all. The road wound between rows of trees, and the farther we went, the quieter it got. No rain hitting the roof anymore. Just silence. Then he said, "Stop." We were in the middle of nowhere. I turned in my seat, but the back seat was empty. Only the shadow on the seat remained. It stretched toward me, even though there was no light source in the car. I floored it back to the main road and didn't take another ride for the rest of the night. I've been driving rideshare for years. Most nights are uneventful. You pick people up, make small talk, drop them off, and never see them again. But some nights, some rides, they stick in your head long after the shift ends. They follow you home. They make you question whether you were ever really alone in the first place. This happened last winter. It was one of those bitterly cold nights where the air feels sharp in your lungs, and the streets are so quiet you can hear the hum of the street lights. A request came in from a part of town I don't usually go to, just outside the downtown area. It's the kind of neighborhood where one street might have brand new condos, and the next street over looks like it hasn't been touched in decades. Half-renovated buildings mixed with abandoned shells of businesses, windows covered in plywood and graffiti. The pickup point was listed as an old diner. When I pulled up, I realized it wasn't just old. It was completely boarded up. The sign was missing half its letters, the glass doors were shattered and covered with planks. And there he was, a man in a faded gray hoodie, standing perfectly still in front of the diner's wall. Not facing me. Not pacing around like most passengers do when they're waiting. Just standing. His head tilted slightly down, like he was listening to something on the other side of the wall. I rolled down my window a little and called out his name. For a moment, he didn't move. Then, very slowly, he turned his head toward me, almost like he was reluctant to look. He started walking toward the car, his footsteps crunching in the snow. When he got in, he didn't close the door right away. He just sat there, one foot outside, his hands resting on his knees. Then he leaned forward slightly and, in a low whisper, said, "You drive fast, right?" I gave a nervous little laugh. I get people where they need to go." He gave me an address, about 25 minutes away. I put the car in drive and pulled off. For the first 10 minutes, he didn't say a word, just stared out the passenger side window at the empty streets sliding by. The only sound was the heater and the faint hum of the tires on the icy road. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "They're not far behind us." I glanced in the rearview mirror. Nothing but empty road stretching into the dark. No headlights, no taillights, just blackness. I asked him what he meant, but he didn't answer. A couple minutes later, he suddenly leaned forward, his face between the two front seats. His voice dropped to an urgent whisper. "If they catch up, don't stop." Not for anything. I could feel my pulse in my ears. Something in the way he said it. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't paranoia. It was a warning. We drove on in silence. The snow was falling harder now, swirling in the beam of my headlights. And then, headlights appeared behind us. At first, I thought it was nothing. Just another car heading the same direction. But no matter how fast I went, the headlights stayed exactly the same distance behind. 2 car lengths, never more, never less. I tried to keep calm, my hands tight on the steering wheel. Then, without warning, the lights were gone. Not faded away, not past, just gone. A few minutes later, we reached the address. Or rather, what was supposed to be the address. It was an empty, snow-covered field. No houses, no buildings, just darkness. The man opened his door without saying a word. He stepped out, his shoes crunching in the snow, and started walking straight into the field. No flashlight, no hesitation. As I watched him disappear into the dark, the ride ended on the app as completed. But there was no record of payment. It was as if the trip never happened at all. The next day, I drove past that same spot in daylight. The field was untouched, the snow smooth and unbroken. No footprints, no path. Nothing to show that anyone had been there the night before. And yet, I know what I saw. I know I drove him there. And sometimes, when I'm out driving late at night, I still glance in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see those same headlights.